All right. Welcome back to the show. This is the Welcome Back podcast. I am your host, Michael Brown, owner of Seymour Mac Productions, and the host here at the Welcome Back podcast. Today, we're having a new conversation. Who are you? What are you about? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, my name is Shauntel Murphy and I am a author. Just came out with a book. It's called Influence Yourself in Life and Leadership. I'm a global leadership speaker and I'm also too an executive and corporate coach. Get excited.
Nice. So the book, is this your first book
This
that
is
just came
my
out?
this is my first book, and this is a way for individuals to kind of hack into my knowledge. Not everybody's going to be able to see me speak. Not everybody's going to be able to be a coach for me to work with them one on one. But now everybody has access to me through the book. Influence Yourself in Leadership and Life.
Oh, that's awesome. Where are you located out of?
San Francisco, California.
Oh, San Francisco. How's
Yeah.
the weather? Probably better than the Poconos.
Oh, yeah, yeah, by far. Yeah. It almost looks like it's summertime outside. So especially with the time change as well too. So it's really been gratifying to the zen just to kind of get that extra daylight, but it's looking fantastic outside.
I love that. Are you from California
Yeah.
originally?
Yeah, second generation.
Oh, that's awesome. So I was looking at your site. I was looking at a little bit about what you do.
Mhm.
People who have, this is a new podcast, but people who have seen the last few episodes know that typically these are first time conversations. We don't pre plan. I didn't send you questions. I didn't say, hey, we're going to talk about this, that, or the other. I always like, as a courtesy, to say, what are some things you definitely want to talk about? What are some things you don't want to talk about? Because if there's no need to go down certain roads, we don't have to go down those roads. But I always like to hear why, or a better way to put it is, how somebody got where they're at. Like, so what you're doing now with your business, how did you, like, what brought you into doing this? What is kind of that, what does that look like? What does that journey look like?
Yeah, the journey looks like when I first started work, I had the opportunity of working with an amazing leader. And by this being my first entry into the corporate world, I just expected that with the next job that was to come. But that didn't happen. Even though I was working in the same industry, pretty much the same company, I didn't get that same level of leadership, that same level of camaraderie. So I really started to study leaders. So I worked in the corporate world for about 2.5 decades. That whole time, I was studying leaders. I was watching them, critiquing them, seeing what worked, what didn't work. And I pretty much just started notating everything out. And then within one of my last jobs, I was working under toxic leadership. And I said, what I really want to do is I want to be able to make a change, but I cannot make the change inside the chamber of being in corporate world. So I took a step back, and that's when I took almost 2 years to redefine what I wanted to present. So I started my own company. It's called Wishing You Well in Life. And that's really my term of endearment to the economy. I wish my clients well. I wish their businesses well. So within me forming my own company, I almost have almost 20 certifications as a coach. I have 2.5 decades of real time experience, real time knowledge, and I was just able to infuse those two ingredients together. And that's what I do. I step on stages and I talk to leaders about how they can really have a profound impact on their leadership journey. It's not just about changing the leader, it's about changing the workforce. It's about changing how people do show up and come to work. Everybody's talking about burnout. I want to address things when they're at fatigue.
Hmm.
That way it's not as critical because once you are burnt out, you're not able to make decisions. So really, this is just like my gem to the economy, a way of me serving people, and really about a way of me challenging leaders now so that they can make an impact with their workforce.
Do you think, in your experience, you've learned more from those leaders that weren't doing it right, in your opinion? Like, so you said that you were in corporate for 20 years. The last job you had, you kind of had like a toxic leadership situation there. I'm sure there's things to learn from both situations, right? So what have you learned from the ones who did it really well, and what have you learned from the ones who weren't doing it so well?
What I've learned from the ones that were doing it well is that when you are doing it well, that you really will retain the talent. You really will be able to keep them along on their journey. Even if they do get like another job opportunity where it might be more money, those individuals are invested. You have trust. You have a level of, it's not like I'm going to work, but it's like I'm about to be with my work family.
Hmm.
This is where I'm infused at, because it's not about the work, it's about the brand, the community, the mission, the shared goal. So I think that that was important. And then through not so great leadership, what I was able to learn is the effects that that does have on individuals' health, on how that does impact their overall well-being, on how now they're working all this overtime and then they're not really spending time with their family. They don't really have that safeguard where they feel transparent of saying, hey, I need to set these boundaries. Now you're restricting people. And those types of environments, you don't really get that many solutions when you're in the boardroom, because people are, they're tired, they're decision fatigue, or they're nervous that maybe they're not going to come up with the right answer. So I learned of what it's like to really have people open up and flourish, and then where you have people confined and then they dwindle down.
Hmm. I worked a lot of like for smaller businesses, like growing up, right, doing construction and stocking shelves at a supermarket and all these things. But before what I'm doing now, I worked for a multinational pharmaceutical company. They did like $5 billion a year or something like that. Huge company. But it was my first like real experience with dealing with a company that has so many layers of leadership and bureaucracy. And it got really clear to me very quickly how disconnected the top of that ladder is from the people who are operating inside of the company, right? And kind of keeping the company moving. And I
Mhm.
saw a lot of leaders who I felt like did it really well and
Mhm.
were able to connect and resonate with their workforce, right? When you're like 4 or 5 layers disconnected from your workforce, it could be
Right,
pretty difficult to do that, right? And
right.
it sound and feel honest and like genuine. And
Mhm.
I had some leaders there who did not know how to do that very well. And frankly, what you just said was exactly what I experienced, where it was just all about the numbers. Are we hitting our KPIs? What are our metrics looking like? And never taking the time to really ask the people who are frankly keeping the company going,
Mhm.
hey, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we improve? What are some things that, you would like to see happen inside the company? So do you think that's just like a natural byproduct of larger corporations? Like once a company or a corporation hits a certain size, whether it's number of employees or amount of revenue, that this natural disconnect starts happening? Is that something that you noticed?
It's something that does happen in some types of organizational frameworks, but the organizations that really do care and they really do seek out that feedback, there's always the ones where they do gather that feedback, where you do have some leaders that do rounding, where they will go from the bottom all the way to the top, where they will shake some hands and start to ask people about their feedback. Like, you know what, we were thinking about making some changes down here, but since you're the one that's operating this, how do you feel about this? Is this
Mhm.
something that would create a leaner system, or is this something that would be of a disadvantage? When you do have leaders that do talk about, making a difference, you can't make the difference at the top, because like you said, you're so disconnected with the bottom. So it's about getting that buy-in from the individuals that are actually doing the job. If someone was to come down to the bottom, they might talk to somebody and that person might be able to identify a trend, a up and coming trend that's coming. They might be able to identify, hey, this technology is old, we need to invest in X, Y, and Z. So when you do talk about different organizations, they don't put titles. Titles are to the side. It's about we all have that shared vision of what's actually going to be able to work. And that's what I was talking about with one of my first jobs. The thing that made that leader so remarkable is he started working for that organization when he was a teenager. So he started at the bottom and then he
Hmm.
was able to work his way all the way to the top. So when he was making decisions, he knew how it would impact the different departments because he used to work in those departments. So you rarely have somebody who's that tapped into the pulse of the organization. But once you have that pulse, now you on fire.
Yeah, and from like a cultural, like a respect for the leadership perspective, I think when you have somebody who has worked up from the bottom level towards the top of it, there is just a natural ability for the workforce to actually have respect for them because, hey,
Mm-hmm.
he started where I was, so
Yeah.
he understands now. You are, you're running a corporation, especially if it's a large corporation. You're beholden to your shareholders, and there's margins that have to be met and all these things. But I think it is detrimental for companies who forget to embrace the people who are working for the company, right? So that's awesome. So have you been working, do you work mostly with larger companies, or do you work with small businesses as well?
Mostly I work with a lot of executives, but lately I have been partnering with a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and then entrepreneurs, those that are still in corporate America and they are also in building their own company as well. And so
Hmm.
my heart is really with the entrepreneurs as me being an entrepreneur myself. So I really do root for the small fishes because we're still all able to compete with those big firms as well too. I think that it's important, especially after the pandemic, individuals realize I'm not really happy here at my job and I would be having a more fulfilling experience if I finally do go through with what I've been trying to go through.
Hmm.
And I look at it like right now, you have so many people that are coming out and they have awesome brands, awesome services. And like what I tell them all the time, it's not the business itself that fails within the first year. It's us as individuals that fail. You're going to hear a lot of no's. It's going to be a lot of obstacles. You will have to do some marketing. You will have to do some selling. Now you've come from an organization where there were systems in place, and now you have to put together those systems yourself. So within that chamber, it does get to be a little bit exhausting and overwhelming. But if you can get through those details, you will have a successful endeavor with your company.
Yeah, I think social media recently in the past few years, especially since COVID happened, has made has presented entrepreneurship as this like escape from, I don't want to say escape from working, but that if you become an entrepreneur, you're going to have all the time in the world to do all the great things that you want to do. And hopefully eventually that is the case, but until you have created something that you no longer have to work inside of, you could just work on,
Right.
typically you have just created a glorified job for yourself. So that's like the first initial struggle, right? It's like, all right, cool, I started this business. I feel it with myself, my video business. I started this video business, but until I have editors and people can go out and shoot for me, and salespeople, and people who can operate this thing while I go to Disney with my family for the next,
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks or whatever, like I
Right.
have to be here. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
show up and you don't do the sales calls and you don't, make the effort, you're not going to, nothing comes back to you, right? So
Right.
um yeah, I think it's a lot harder than people realize it is. And until you do it, unfortunately, it's one of those things you just never know until you start doing it, right? what
Right.
are what are some of the pitfalls that you see with new entrepreneurs? What is like the top, couple things that they just absolutely suck at because they didn't realize they were going to have to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of things that I see, a lot of entrepreneurs, things that are a pitfall for them is one of the top things is them actually selling themselves. They don't really realize that there will become a point in time where you will have to sell it. It's not going to sell itself. Unfortunately, we all want a system that's just going to magnetically attract our ideal client, but they come up with a product, they come up with a service, but they don't really have an idea of who their ideal client is. It's
Yep.
like you need to put yourself in their shoes. Who is your ideal client? It can't just be everybody. So you have to narrow that part down. And they have a problem with narrowing that down because they think that that's missed opportunity for them to make a sale. But it's missed opportunity for you to make a sale if you don't identify who that person is. Is this person a teenager? Is this person a middle age? Is this person a senior citizen? Because if you're marketing your product for teenagers, then you really shouldn't be on LinkedIn. That doesn't make any sense. They're not going to be dwelling there in that space. So a lot of the times they can't really zone in on who their ideal client is. And then when they do zone in on who their ideal client is, they don't know how to pitch it to them. They feel uncomfortable with talking about numbers. And you have to talk about these numbers, or else how do you expect to get paid? And so one of the things that I do tell them is start to practice in the mirror. Start to practice with a family member so you can get comfortable talking about the price. Because it's one thing if you got somebody on the hook, but if you're uncomfortable with talking about the price, then they're just going to get off the hook and go to somebody else who is comfortable talking about the price, and it doesn't feel awkward. Have you ever had those conversations where you're really interested in buying something and then you're like, okay, how much? And they're like, well, no, that's too many ums for me. Say, I don't know about this now. Now it's looking like I don't know if I trust you now, because is this going to be like, is it really worth the value of it? When something is worth that value, you're clear, you're concise, and you got it all on point.
Yeah. All right. Before we go to another top thing that you notice, let's stand on this for a while because I think this is by far the number one thing that people suck at, and including me. All right. I literally just had a conversation about this today with a friend of mine who owns a video company down in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I hate sales. I absolutely hate sales. It's uncomfortable. I don't like doing it. I'm actually not like that bad at it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I don't know. I love talking to people. I love getting to know, somebody's situation, what their company's all about, how I could actually bring them value. But then turning it into like an actual sales process becomes very difficult because I don't like pushing the sale. And that is kind of a problem for me. So, and I noticed this with all new entrepreneurs that I know. They
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to sell. They don't want to sell. They don't take the time to learn to sell. Like you said, practicing, putting in the reps, writing a script, going through it over and over and over again. And then even like coming up with all the objections they might hear and then figuring out how to handle those objections and then running through those over and over again.
Yep.
It's like working out. You have to work that muscle out. And eventually you just get comfortable with hearing no because 10
Right.
no's leads to a yes,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. So that is so freaking funny that you said that because like I feel that so much. That hit me so hard.
Because when you are an entrepreneur, it's not just like, okay, you got them on the hook. Now I'm gonna transfer you to the sales department. You can't do that transfer off like that. You are the sales department. So, like I tell individuals, if you have a product and it's really solving a problem, and the individual knows that it's solving that problem, go ahead and lay out that price very confidently. And the worst that can happen is that they'll be able to say no. But the best thing that'll happen is that you've practiced telling that price, you have gotten that out there with a straight face, and then the next time you get on the call, you can have an even more straighter face, and it can be really calm. And sometimes when you do have somebody on the hook and they're really interested, they've already are already ready to write the check. You just have to
Mhm.
give them the number. So just give them the number and then go from there. And if you feel like your price point is too high, then maybe you should bring it down. Maybe you should bring it down and just do like a pilot program, but also to know your worth as well too. I was talking with somebody and they were just terribly frightened when it came to the whole sales process. So like I told them, if you're just that frightened about it, then once you have them on the line for the product, then just send them an email explaining everything out and then have the price in the email. And then within that email will talk for yourself. It can have frequently asked questions at the bottom. That way you don't have to worry about the rebuttals. And then they can just email you back and say yay or nay. And then you've taken the pressure off of yourself. But you have to get comfortable with doing even that as well too.
Yeah. Do you think probably the best thing is to just do it on the phone, do it live? That way you can handle the objections, right?
Absolutely. I totally think that that's the best way to go about it because once again, you're building trust, you're building a rapport. Nobody can have a business just built off of one sale. You want to have repeat sales. So it's about the experience that they do have with you. So if you're able to get them on the phone and they're able to tell you that yes, then that's great. They're going to go and tell somebody else about the wonderful experience that they had with you, and then they'll be able to share your price, and then you can kind of go from there. But basically, our businesses are driven on value-based relationships, and you can only drive these relationships is by communication, verbal.
Yeah. And if you are confident in your product, in your service, and you know that it's valuable and it solves a problem for them, then you should be confident with saying what it's worth, right?
Right.
Somebody told me one time, they said, if you, when you say the number, if you don't feel completely uncomfortable, it's not high enough. And I was like, oh, all right. And that's typically what we do. We usually, when we start out, we undersell ourselves
Oh
because it's
yeah.
uncomfortable. If I know that this thing is worth 5 grand,
Right.
but I feel uncomfortable with it, I might only say 2 grand,
Right.
and they might even have a problem with 2 grand.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
and now all of a sudden you're down to 1 grand, and now you're doing it for free 99, and it's
Right.
like that ain't any way to run a business, right?
Right. I had one client who was comfortable with telling people, "Yeah, we have this special promotion going on today, and it's only priced at 5,000." And I said, "If you could have that same enthusiasm and ask for 8,000, I think that you would totally be the. You can only have a special promotion for only so long. Like the
Hmm.
special should have a duration period to it. Have that same level of energy because you know it's worth more than 5,000, and they know it's worth more than 5,000 too. That's why everybody's getting invested in that 5,000. Now go ahead and rev it up. Go ahead and bring it up a notch because we have to get paid with where we are, or else we will find ourselves going back into those corporate jobs.
Yeah, and there's no going back. That's what
Right.
I keep telling myself. There's no going back. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going back and punching a clock for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
The way I left corporate was through COVID. It just, my time came to an end there, and it is what it is. But it was the opportunity. It was the catalyst that I needed personally
Mm-hmm.
to take a leap of faith in myself and in God to say, "Hey, man, I have something greater for you than answering to somebody else."
Right.
Because, and I tried getting another corporate job, another pharmaceutical job. I have a very good resume. I should have gotten another pharmaceutical job, but none of those doors ever really opened. And obviously in hindsight now, I'm very happy they never opened, and I finally took the leap of faith that I needed to. But most people need to hit rock bottom, need the door to be slammed closed on them before they have any faith in themselves. Why is that? Why do we have to wait till it gets absolutely horrible before we decide to take control?
A lot of people say through your pain, that's when you find your purpose. It's almost like that gun to your head approach. Like I might ask somebody, how are we able to do X, Y, and Z? They're like, I don't know. You have a gun to your head. How am I able to do X, Y, and Z? Well, first we got to do this. Second, we got to do that. Third, we got to do this. Now you're coming up with all these answers. Somebody can be sitting at home like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna get off the couch. Your house start catching on fire, boom, you off the couch. It's almost like once the level of around us starts to intensify, then that brain starts going into the reserves and it start coming up with ideas. So it's almost like you really got to put yourself with the gun to the head approach. Like, okay, what do I have to do? But when we're living in a level of where we're comfortable and things are okay, we don't really have that gun to our head approach. We're like, okay, I'll just deal with it. I don't like this job. Someone said, yeah, my boss is stupid. But it's like, but your boss hired you. So what does that say about you? We have to be careful about the things that we do say. And it's almost like through our pain, then we do start to go into those reserves and say, you know what, I've been thinking about doing this as a child. Just imagine if you would have done that as a child. Now you would be that industry expert that people would be lending to. You might be a trailblazer within that industry. So who's to say what might happen? But I think that we really need to, like, a lot of times now I have a lot of people that's fearful, like, they're doing all these layoffs. The job market is a little bit clunky. AI is taking over. AI is safeguarding these jobs where I can't gain entry. And with that being said, okay, well, then what is the next step? You have to have an escape route. So, what is your escape route? If something does happen today, what do you have in place? Do you even have a business plan? Do you have a way of how you're going to source your income or do some crowdfunding to build off of that? I always recommend people don't use their money, but use other people's money. What type of frameworks do you have in place? If something was to happen to you tomorrow, can somebody else pick up this plan and still implement it?
Yeah. Well, I could tell you for certain, in my case, not at all. If I get hit by if I go outside, walk my dog, and a tree falls on me, this thing is over. The show is over. There's nobody to pick the camera up. There's nobody, and that's a problem. That's a problem for my family. I have a young son. I have a wife. Luckily, my wife works. She's a nurse. She has a good job, but it would be devastating
Yeah,
to obviously to lose somebody in the family and then to lose that income, but also to lose something that I've worked so hard to build up,
right.
even in its early stages, to then it just completely crumble, right? So, and you never know what's going to happen, right? I'm thankful that I wake up every morning and I'm able to give it another shot, but you just never know. So yeah, that's a really good point. And yeah,
Mhm.
again, just to reiterate what you said, like the gun to the head analogy, it's just, for me personally, it just took my back being against the wall. It literally took me to have no other,
Mhm.
like, to feel like I lost it all. Everything that I had left was slipping, for me to finally go, maybe there's something different here for me.
Mhm.
Maybe it isn't punching the clock for somebody else. And there's nothing wrong with punching the clock for somebody else. But for me, there just wasn't. My problem was I was making pretty good money. I had good benefits. I was in a comfortable situation.
Mhm.
But the problem with that was it was a comfortable situation that could just be snatched from me. And it was. So yeah, it's tricky, right?
And like, I do talk to a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, one foot in, one foot out, and they talk about that. Like, well, what about my benefits, and what about this, and what about that? And I said, but are these things that's coming from you, or is this the committee inside your head giving you that doubt? Because when we do look at what happens if I leave here, then it's almost like, why are we leaving a good thing to do the unforeseen? Like,
mm,
this is something so unknown, and that inner voice, that's what keeps us from doing so many different things. And the inner voice, it wants to keep us in that familiarity state, like we're comfortable here, we're okay. It doesn't want to take those new risks. And I always put it in the framework like of a computer. When you're downloading a new system, that means our new idea and our new business. What happens with the computer? You have to reboot it. So that's the same thing with us. Sometimes we have to reboot ourselves. That way we're able to download that application. And you're able to easily download a new application when you got the gun to your head. You can download anything because you're trying to come up with ideas, because you're almost like in survival mode.
mm-hmm.
But if you're up top, you're like, well, why should I do this? But I think that it is comfortable, being comfortable, but then we got to get uncomfortable, and we have to definitely turn it up a notch, because how society is set up now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But if we build something and we have that legacy, it's the systems and the people we put in place today that will leave our legacy, because that's going to outlive both you and I. Our legacy
Mm-hmm.
is going to be there. And when you think about it, the legacy, that's like the ultimate form of success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would be yeah, I think about, like, all right, when I'm long gone and I've built a nice video production company that's running itself or whatever, my son, he's 11, if he chose to enter the same industry, I have built this thing that he could work in and grow in and take over one day, and then who knows beyond that, right? So yeah, the legacy is but some people don't care about legacy. So then what do you do with those people?
Well, then the people who don't care about it, I don't even deal with those people. I don't even see those people. They're not even on my radar. I'm on the radar of individuals that want to be that pioneer. Because I'm telling you right now, when you go off the road, you're going onto the dirt road and you're creating a path. That's labor induced. It takes labor to get those trees chopped down. It takes labor to pave the path, to put down the concrete, to line up the road. That's a lot of labor right there. Some people, they want certain things, but then it's like, oh, that's what it takes to get it. Count me out. I tap out like a wrestler. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I'm only with people that are willing to go that extra mile. It's about taking a risk. It's a lot of people out here who aren't gamblers. So, what do? If you go to Vegas and you're not a gambler, what do? You watch the show.
You
So
watch the show.
so right now, me and you, we are a part of the show that they are watching, but we're the ones that's out here taking the risk gambling.
Yeah, like you can't win no games you don't play in, right?
Exactly.
So
Right.
so you got to play the games if you want to win. And
Exactly.
so have you entered like, business relationships with people who sought you out for coach and said, "Hey, I really want to achieve this thing. I have this great idea." And initially seems like they're on fire, they're ready to do it, and then at some point they just hit a brick wall. Like what happens there with people? I mean, I know personally what happens with me. It gets very daunting to day after day when you feel like the needle isn't moving to keep trying to move the needle day after day until one day all of a sudden it jumps and you're like, finally, I figured it out. Something clicked, like everything lined up. But until that happens, it could be a very daunting and it feels slow sometimes. So
Mhm.
what happens in those cases where you're working with somebody and initially they seem like they're on fire and then they just hit a brick wall? How do you get them back up?
Well, one thing I always tell people is that when we get started, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be some work, and there will be some days where you're feeling fantastic, and then other days where you might be feeling like a failure. So, what I always have them do is to write out the big bang why. Why are we here? What is your main goal, and why is this your goal? So, when they do start to hit those pitfalls, let's go back to why. Why is to take care of my grandmother, my siblings, my kids, to be able to have this, that, and the third. So when we are hitting those pitfalls, let's think about your why. Let's think about all those things and who you're doing it for. Now let's go back in and let's churn it up. What is the problem? What seems to be the pitfall? But then that's the beautiful thing about it, is that when you do have a coach, you don't really hit the pitfall for too long because I'm there to hold you accountable. That's where I start to work in out. If you might fall down on this business battlefield, I'm still here standing tall for you. They can't knock us both down. That's just not going to happen. So then
Mhm.
that's when we come together and join forces like Batman and Robin, and we really do go into the war room. We're able to work it out. Like you're having a pitfall, maybe with getting your website or something, getting that up. Okay, great. Let's talk to a couple of people and let's work around these kinks. Maybe they're having some problem identifying, their opportunities in the market. Okay, let's do X, Y, and Z and get you back into that. So it might be those days where you feel like you are overwhelmed, but that's one of the beautiful parts about getting, consulting by a coach or even a mentor, is that you
Mhm.
don't feel as isolated on the island. You do have someone who you can talk to. And like I tell them, remember why you are here, remember why you're doing this. And we're not going to know everything. That's why we have to map out our network. We have to be able to delegate and throw that ball to different people who are able to help us out.
Yeah, I'm writing a book right now. I feel like a lot of imposter syndrome because who the hell am I to write a book? But it's called Entrepreneur of Circumstance, right? And it's for those people who didn't really think they would be an entrepreneur, but something happened in their life and it kind of launched them into it. And it's just kind of like what my experience has been. And the thing that you just said is one of the chapters where it's mentors, coaches,
Mhm.
and basically mastermind groups, right? It's like to have to have a mentor. I have a mentor and I've gone through an industry specific coaching program, which was very beneficial to me.
Mhm.
I'll stay on this one for a second. I met some associates through that program. On the other end of the 6 month program, I felt like it was an amazing success for me. I made $50,000 through the program. It wasn't a very cheap thing, but I turned it into something and I made it into something. There's other people who went through that very same program and said this thing was a scam. I made no money, this and that. And I'm talking to them. I'm like, how is this possible that I made $50,000 and you said it's a scam? Like,
Right.
how is that possible? And
Mhm.
obviously, I've come to the conclusion that it's because I wanted it to work and I put in the work, right?
Right.
So even with a coach, talk a little bit about this. I think some people think I'm going to hire a coach and they're just going to make it happen for me. And that's not really the case. They're going to help you make it happen, right? Can you talk a little bit about what that partnership looks like?
Yeah, because a lot of people they come to me and they're like, "This is my goal," and I'm not. First of all, I'm not your traditional coach. I don't want to be marked as that, regular coach. I don't care about your goals. I care about your desire. A desire to have a desire that outweighs a goal. I have a goal to put gas in my car later on tonight. I have a goal to wash my clothes, but my desire. What is your desire? We go from there. What is your personal desire? What is your professional desire? And people are like, no one's ever asked me about my desire before. Then they really start to think about that. So now I got them on the hook because now this is something that they want no matter what. This is something that they wake up to. This is their burning desire. So now I take what their desire is and then I bring it over into a goal. And with that goal, the goal frameworks, it does talk about galvanize your vision, optimize your influence, align your actions, and then leverage your legacy. So once we put their desire into the goal framework, that's when things start coming out even more crystal clear because now they're going to be more activated to get towards this because this is their desire. So when I do talk to people about what is their desire, if they can't tell me what their desire is, they may not be a good fit for me. Because
Hmm.
if they don't know that, then that lets me know that they're not going to give it their all. And I want for somebody to give it their all because this is the key tip right here. Is I give individuals different types of things to do. It might be 5 things to do. If they have a desire, they're going to do all 5 things. But if they don't have the desire, they might do the first thing and the last thing. And so what's going to happen if it don't work? Now they're telling me it didn't work, but I'm telling them, but you didn't do the other things there to do it. So
Hmm.
it's like I need them to be fully invested. I'm already invested because you've retained me, but if you're not fully invested, then what? So that goes to your point. The program worked out really well for you because you might have followed all of the steps. Now, the people who said it was a scam, did they follow all the same steps? Did
I
they
don't
really have
believe they did.
the same mindset?
Yeah, I don't believe they did. I think they said they were, but
Right.
they didn't actually do it, right?
Hmm.
Well, something that I think I've gotten really good at or better at in these past few years of growth, just as a man and spiritually as a father, a husband, like all around, has been self accountability,
Hmm.
right, and reflection. And I've gotten a lot better at being honest with myself.
Uh-huh.
So, like recently, I've been feeling like things have been super slow in my business. This time last year, I was killing it in perspective, like in perspective, right? I was killing it. I felt like I was doing really good. But this year, I mean, I feel like, what am I doing? Like, I need to tap out. Do I got to go get a job? Like, what the hell's going on? Why can't I do this? And regardless of market and whatever else, like, I have to take ownership of my partner, right? Am I doing enough of the things that I know are required to get people in the door, get projects, on the calendar and to make money? Am I doing them at all? Am I doing enough of them? Am I doing it well enough? Do I need to tweak things? So I know that I struggle with it for sure, and I know other people are struggling with it. So they're going to get a lot of value out of what you're saying. And to your point of having the desire, right? The desire can help you create the list of goals to acquire the desired end
Yes.
result that you're looking for, but
Yes.
maybe thinking from a goal perspective is not big enough. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it's just not big enough. We got to think bigger than that. And some people are like, "Oh, I have goals." Like for example, so many people who have goals of, they're like, "Oh, I want to write a book." but it's taken them 10 years to write this book. I had a desire to write a book, and I was able to get my book knocked out in maybe 4 months. And I did it on my own. I self published the book, I did the margins for my book, I edited the book. I was like, my whole thing is this. To be honest, I talk about balance, right? And I'm a big balance advocate. But to be honest, I didn't really have that much balance because at night, that's when I was working on my book. So here's the caveat to balance: if you're being productive at night, go ahead and go with that productivity. It's one thing if you up at night and you just, here, there, go to sleep, go to bed. But if you are being productive, if you're on a roll, stay on that track because you'll get so many things done. And I was able to really knock out my book. It took me a long time for me to identify the title, but once I had the title, that's when everything started to come for me. So going back, I've had friends who say they write in this book. They still ain't wrote the book yet, but I had a desire to write my book, and my book is already out. It's already published. And they're like, oh, wait, I was supposed to be the one writing the book. And it's like, great. I didn't write your book. I wrote my book. And
Yeah.
they're just like, but I was the one. But here you are. So it's like you have a goal to write the book, but my desire, it trumped their goal. The desire is the ace card. It's the wild card. It's that card you throw out in the end that trumps over everything on the table.
Yeah. Just because I'm going through the process now, so I'm actually very interested in this topic. When you decided to write the book and all right, you came up with the title, did you research like how to write a book? Did you write a book outline or did you just start typing away?
I've been writing books ever since I could write, but I just never published anything. It's like writing has always been just within my wheelhouse. So I just said, this is something that would be good for me to do. And when I did come up with the title, then the first thing I did was I started to outline the chapters and everything just started to flow. So once I locked out those chapters, then me going back from the top, that just started to flow. I might have getting ready to go to sleep, and then I'm thinking of some ideas. I would insert it inside that chapter, inside that bucket where it would be able to go into. And then, like, I might have been writing stuff out on a napkin, or I'm writing little ideas and then put it in that chamber, and everything just started to become in sync.
How many edits did you go through?
Oh my gosh, that part was the part that took probably the longest.
I'm entering that part now. So,
Yeah, that part, that probably took like a good month and a half. Me, you going through different revisions, adding this, taking away this. So that took a while, maybe like 13, 14, maybe even 15. So that
mhm.
was the part where I was like, oh my God, maybe I need to go ahead and get somebody to help me do it. But that would go against the things that I say to my clients, how I do tell them I need you to become self-reliant. When you are self-reliant, you depend on you. That's when you start to challenge yourself. So now you are that influencer. And like the name of my book is influence yourself. So that means get the education. Everything is like so readily available for us now on the internet. It's ridiculous. So sometimes you do kind of got to do a little bit more research. You do have to churn your brain, but that learning development, guess what? Now, if you have a child or a spouse or a friend or a family member and they're trying to do something, now you can be that advocate for them because you actually did it yourself.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I am a firm believer in you have to do something before you pass it off onto somebody else, right? So
Excellent.
if you like for me, the I would love it if I could hire a salesperson or a team and just have them do the sales. But if I don't even understand how to sell my product, then how the hell am I going to train anybody else to do it?
Right, right,
Right. So
right.
now that you've gone through the process, the painstaking process of coming up with an idea for a book, writing the book, spending so much time going through edits and edits and edits, self-publishing it, and
Mhm,
then and maybe one of the hardest things to go, it's done. Like I could keep tweaking this thing until the end of time, and
mhm.
I'll always feel like it's never done. It's done. You have to like have enough faith in yourself and enough courage to say, okay, we're leaving it there. it's
Mm-hmm.
maybe never going to be perfect, but this is good, this is valuable, and then just put a period at the end of that sentence and hit publish, right?
And the beautiful part about that is that if you still have some more to talk about, then that's great, because then boom, now you're unlocking yourself for another book, and you can still really keep those wheels churning. Because I think that as an author, you'll always have something else to say. So your first book, that can be your first book, but then how exciting to have a second book or even
Hmm.
a third book. And I think that that's when it really starts to go even deeper. One of my favorite writers of all time is definitely Stephen King. Stephen King just didn't do one, he did several. So I think that that's just where our journey does begin. And I think that, like they say before, like, as you know, for parents, your ceiling is going to be your son's floor. So he's going to take what you left off at, and he's going to take that to the next level and the next level. So I think that by you doing those things, that's very commendable, because he'll be able to take all those things and bundle it up and do even more. So I think the more you lay out, that'll just be easier for him to pick up.
I love that. That is that's awesome. I love that. I just love the thought of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Him being a young man, he's entering the coming years where he's going to start trying to figure out like what the hell he wants to do with himself. He's still young enough. He just turned 11, but in these next few years, especially when he enters high school, that's when he's going to have to
Mm-hmm.
start figuring out, well, what the hell am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I can't just say I want to be a YouTuber forever unless you're really good at that and it's
Right.
making us, if
Right.
it's making you money, then who am I to tell you to not to do it, but maybe it's not what he winds up wanting to do. I don't know. He's wanted to do so many things. He told me, what did he tell me the one time? He's like, I want to be a dog walker. I'm like, all right. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you be the best damn dog walker we've ever seen, and I
Yeah.
got no problem with that. you
That's
know?
it. You know, what amazes me now is to see so many kids on Shark Tank. And you have so many kids that are CEOs of these $1 million businesses. And I was just talking to a friend a couple of years ago, and she was telling me a CEO of her company is 14 years old. And I was like, wow, like, what is that like? Like, do they have like a candy room, a snack room? Are you guys able to rollerblade around there? What is that like? But nowadays, all it took was for his parents to really listen to what he was saying and to really take that off. So, like you said, be the best dog walker. It's like, okay, well, let's start you off walking these dogs, and then let's see how we can build up this business from here. Like,
Hmm.
let's really, like, you got to have the ear for that, because who knows what might happen. And he could blow you and your wife out, and you guys be like, oh my God, who knew this was going to be the breadwinner right here?
I hope so. I absolutely hope that is the case. I don't care what it winds up being. I hope that's the case.
Right.
But I think it does take a strong support system, right? Especially for young entrepreneurs, all entrepreneurs, but young people and entrepreneurs just starting out. They need a strong support system, right? And as
Yeah.
a parent, it is super important to give that strong base to your kids and show them like, hey, not only do I believe in you,
Hmm.
you can believe in yourself too. And not all of us had that, right? I'm 41. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, where there wasn't like a lot of that going on where I grew up and just in my family unit. It was more of just kind of get through the day and don't be a abject failure, and we'll be
Right.
proud of you. And I feel like society as a whole, and where I want my family unit to be, is it's not good enough to just not be a failure. Like, I do want you to achieve greatness because I know it's possible. I
Right.
know that your potential will allow you to do that, but our kids need to know that they have our support and that they could do great things. The internet has been a very interesting double-sided or a double-edged sword, where we have all the information at the grasp of our fingertips, but it's also so clouded with just like negativity and just so much opportunity for somebody to not believe in themselves, even though it's like a super tool, a superpower to have the internet and have all these answers and information right there whenever you need them. It's so clouded with social media and just kind of like these low level, low frequency things that are out there too. So it becomes a little tricky as a parent of a a young man to help navigate that?
But this is the one thing, like I was just talking to one of my clients the other day, because when someone writes out like their ideas and when we're in the war room, they write down one thing, but then I always challenge them that let's blow it up. Okay, you thought this, but let's blow it up. And they'll come back and they'll have blown up the idea. Then I'll say, let's blow it up some more. And then they'll blow it up again. This is the third time they've blown it up now. And I'm like, now let's blow it up some more. And they're like, I don't know if I can. But guess what? Kids, they have imagination. As we get older, we lose that imagination for some reason. And that's why I like working with the young ones because they blow it up the first time I ask them. Like they're thinking of all these different things. So by the time I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow. Like they're not just thinking about today, but they're thinking about 20 years from now. Like, wow. Like this is, but then when I work with adults, they write down something that's really confined and it takes 3 or 4 times to blow it up. But with the kit, they've already blown it up, and that's that imagination. So I always encourage people, don't lose sight of that imagination. It's okay to imagine things, it's okay to dream. In order for a dream to come true, we've had to have at least had a dream.
Hmm.
And kids, they still have that. So I think that that's some things that we can really learn from them nowadays, is to really have that imagination. And I love talking to them because they're just fearless. They just don't know of the doubt. We're the older adults, we're the ones that have more doubt than they do. They are just, like, yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I want to fly. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
go ahead and do this. And it's like, okay, that's great. Now if we can fuse that into what we have, I think it'd be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're the old version of Peter Pan, right? We can't
Mhm.
fly. We don't have those happy thoughts anymore. I
Right,
wonder if it's just because, living through the routine of going to work, paying the mortgage, having the bills, having parents who probably told us to do the safe thing instead of
right.
taking the risk and doing the thing that really
Mhm.
really invigorated you as a young person, and then not doing it, and
Mhm.
then maybe having the regret of not doing it, but knowing that, like, oh well, at least I worked a job and I've been at this job for 30 years. So it's like we create this safety within the routine, even though that routine has created a limitation on our happiness.
Very true. We've had to transfer in our imagination and just go to be structured within society.
Yeah, I hate that. I don't like that.
Right.
I don't like that. And I hate that I have, I'm 40. Well, let me think. I was like 38, 39 when I made this transition in my life. So I'm just like, why am I waiting till I'm 40 years old to start doing for myself when I could have did this so long ago? But you can't think like that either, because you come to the crossroads when you show up at the crossroads. It can't come any sooner than when you realize you're there, right? It's like you can't receive the message until you're ready to receive it, right? It's the same idea. Um, so yeah, we have to do our best for our young ones to let their imaginations flourish, and then give them the support to say, hey, if you really believe that, and that's the thing that you think you want to do, give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And if it works, fantastic. And if it doesn't work, what are you learning from it?
Yep, and I think that when you do start to do that earlier, that will give them the confidence and the support to have that same mindset as they get older. They'll continue to have that same growth mindset. They won't feel so confined. They won't feel so limited, and they will be able to be risk takers towards where, yeah, entrepreneurship, easy peasy. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah, and as parents, I think a lot of parents like live through their kids, like vicariously through their kids, right? So like I sucked at baseball. I was not a sports kid at all growing up.
Mm-hmm.
My older brother, I have a brother that's 1 year older than me. He was always way better at everything than me. He was better at sports, better at school, better with the girls. Like I always felt like I was just trailing behind. And now as a dad, I have to catch myself sometimes because my son just started playing baseball. So I'm like pushing him. I'm like, man, I want this kid to be so great at baseball because I sucked at baseball. It's like that's the wrong way to think about it. The right way to I want him to be good at baseball because he loves baseball
Right.
and he wants to be good at baseball. So I want to just be the support for him to
Mm-hmm.
help lift him up in that area, not because I was I'm trying to live through his success now.
Right.
Um And I think a lot of parents do that, and it's not. I think it's well intentioned. They want their kids to do great things,
Hmm.
but we have to be careful where we place that the driver for that. Right? Is it because is it because we felt like we failed at it, or is it because we really want this kid to do the thing that they love doing?
Right. Hmm.
Right? But sometimes the thing we love doing is not the thing that is going to be productive for us, or be profitable for us, or be the business path. So have you seen that too in your experience, where it's like, hey, somebody really loves art, they love making art, but that's not the thing that's going to work out for them, or they love doing X, Y, and Z, but it's just never going to be a viable business for them? Have you ever had to have that conversation with people?
Well, yeah, I've had to have that conversation a couple of times because I've had individuals where they can bake. Oh my God, they can bake. They are definitely a good baker. And like I tell them, I know a place right down the street where their cookies aren't as good, but they've been in business for 10 years. So it's not how good you can bake. It's about how long can you stay in business. Do you have the acclimate to be the business person? Are you able to handle the marketing, the finance, the customer service part of it? And they're like, oh, but I can bake. I can do a really good pie. That's wonderful. But once again, I know somebody who's serving pies right down the street. It may not be as good, but they've been in business forever. So you really have to think about what you're good at, and does that transfer to you being a good business person? So you might be able to do really great artwork, like that's great. I'm not doubting that your portraits are beautiful, but are you able to have that business sense where you're able to get your artwork in galleries, where you're able to get your art seen? I've seen so many great artists and they have these pictures in the garage. Okay, that's great, but how are we going to get them from the garage into the gallery? How can we get these items to be seen? So it's really about challenging them and really asking those questions where they can have that aha moment, like aha, like okay, this is where she's going with this. That's why that's the difference between a hobby and a business.
Hmm.
Hobby is you keeping it in the garage. A hobby is you baking these pies and giving it to your friends and family. But how can we turn this into a business? Who do we need to also to leverage to bring into this business model with us now? Like that's great, but you need a partner. This
Yeah.
is great. Who do you have over here who can now represent you where now it can be solidified? Because this is the problem that I see happen a lot of times is people have these great ideas, but if nobody's there to buy it, how does your idea get validated? How can we get this validated? And so that's the important thing that I try to ask people is what's the next step, because it's going to take just more than you, and you're partnering with me as a coach. So now my homework to you is who can you also to bring on board that you trust, that could be the yin to your yang, because you need another partner in this.
Yeah. And that could be, I think it could be hard for people to think of that early on in their entrepreneur journey, because they don't have, they don't have the funds to hire somebody typically. When they're, I just kind of speaking for myself, in a creative business, it's very hard to let go of certain controls, because the small mind thinks nobody could do this better than me, nobody can capture my vision that I have, and hit record better than I can, or edit the video better than I can. And that was something that I got over last year, where I was editing everything myself still, which is the major bottleneck in my business, or my type of business. And just like, I just had a moment where I was like, if I think I'm the best editor there is, who am I fooling? Like, I know I'm good, but I'm not the best. And I
Right.
certainly could find somebody who's as good as me and
Mm-hmm.
buy that time back.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be the struggle, is getting over that hump of that ego, right? Because that's what it usually is, right?
Right.
It's the ego of nobody could do this as good as I can. Nobody could be
Mm-hmm.
my partner in this business. And you might have a business, but you might not have the business that you want it to grow to be after you've blown it up 3 or 4 or 5 times, like you said, right?
Right, exactly. And you want to be in a position where you're really able to put your energy and invest that in what really matters for your desire so that you can achieve your goals. Because we can't put our energy in everywhere, or else we'll have no energy at all the next day.
Hmm.
And then that's how sometimes people get sick. People lose their voice. the body gets tired. So you want to be able to avoid those types of things for health reasons. But most importantly, you want to be able to show up every day for your business. And how can you show up to be your best? By delegating some of the work. And you can delegate it to somebody who has the same passion and momentum that you already have. And it's like, okay, great. Now we're going to come into this partnership and we're going to understand that I don't have the money to pay you. But when we start to embark on this journey, this is how we both will be able to get paid. Now, this person is working just as hard as you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that I've seen in myself and friends' businesses too, that a lot of them are at this pivotal point where they need to let go of thinking that they have to wear all the hats because there's just not enough time in a day. You don't have enough arms to juggle all the
Mm-hmm.
balls that it's going to take. So you have to start delegating, and you have to find people that you could train up or you could put some faith in to take over some of the tasks, especially the non-value adding tasks that
Right.
aren't generating the actual revenue. They're
Mm-hmm.
just things that have to be done, admin stuff or whatever that just has to get done. You don't have to do that, right? I had my one business coach tell me, you need to stop doing the dishes. Don't fold your own laundry. Hire somebody to fold the laundry. Hire somebody to do the dishes. This and that. Now he also is from a different part of the world, so I don't know if that was just more of a cultural thing. But I'm like,
Right.
I don't love doing the dishes. I don't love folding the laundry, but it's like I'm not hiring a maid. Like I don't know, maybe I just not
Right.
at the revenue generation point where I feel like that's a viable thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I get the point. The point being, you're wasting a lot of time doing things that aren't adding value to your business. So
Right.
how does one identify the things that they should be focusing on and things that they can let go of and delegate to somebody else?
That's a great question. I always ask individuals to audit your time. Audit your time. Look at your work week and see how you are spending your time. And then look at what is something that you don't need to be spending your time on. Look at all those little tiny tasks on things that you're spending your time on, and then see if you could leverage those little things to somebody else. Then once you start to calculate your time throughout the week on all those little items, now you can see on how much time you're actually freed up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I talk about the balance within that part, is now you're able to go watch your son do baseball. Now you're able to go and take a walk with your wife. Now you're able to go and be creative. Now you've delegated that off to somebody else, then it only makes this the perfect sense. And what we call that sometimes is just a little housekeeping, phone calls, certain emails, certain things that don't even require your real attention, but they're just stuff that you're just used to doing on a routine. That could be somebody else's routine now. Keep them busy with all those things, and now you're freed up towards where now you can work on what's really important. And I always tell people, track how you're using your time and track that against your goals. Now, are these little things getting towards your goals? No, they're not. They're like the little housekeeping items. So all those items that's really not going towards your goal, which is your desire, you can pass those items off with no effort. And a lot of people, they don't really go back and look at all the things that they've done during the work week. That's why I tell people, start noting it down and then audit your time against that, and you'll be surprised some of the little things you're doing that just aren't going towards the greater good of anything at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I have a thought of when I hired an editor, because that is the most time consuming part of the process for me, it did free up a lot of time for me. Now, if I want to go to the baseball game, I can or whatever. But if I'm just using that reclaimed time by watching Netflix, then it's not really reclaiming my time. It's not, well, it's reclaiming my time, but it's not helping me advance the mission.
Right.
So be smart about your reclaimed time and
Mhm.
now think like, okay, if I just freed up 8 hours this week because I'm not editing this project or a couple projects, in that 8 hours, what is the potential that could be done? Cool. I could spend a few hours more with the family. Great. That's awesome. But also I could spend 4 or 5 hours, you know, doing sales, prospecting, going to networking events, shaking hands, meeting people, or just spend more focus on the clients that I do have. So that way they are having a more valuable experience. And that way I'm able to retain them easier. Right.
Right.
Because the freaking worst thing ever is getting a great client in the door, doing something for them, they feel like they had such an inadequate experience, and then they leave and they go work with somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's to blame for that? You're the only one to blame for that one. So
Right.
that hurts. You can't let that happen twice. If
No.
it happens once, it happened one too many times. But
Hmm.
two times, it's like you got to figure out what the hell went wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah. I love the conversation. I think a lot of people need to hear some of the things that you said, because a lot of it is hard truths of
Mhm.
reflection, self-reflection. Like, you have to take accountability for yourself in this game, and without that, I don't know how far you plan on getting as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that a lot of individuals, they have a misconception about entrepreneurship, but once they are in it, then it's like now you start hearing, you remember everything everybody else said. The words that were on mute before, now they are amplified, and you're like, I see what they were talking about. I understand now. So one of the main things I always tell individuals is you have to be intentional with your time. If you're not intentional with your time, you will be wasting time.
Hmm. Do you have a routine? Do you have like a morning routine? Are you big on that, or like a night routine? As far as like prepping to shut it down for the day and go to sleep, or do you just you wake up whenever, you go to sleep whenever? Like, how do you work it?
No, I do have a morning routine where I do wake up early and I am able to get myself into the mindfold of the day. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not watching TV. I'm really just getting clear with myself, identifying myself, asking myself, how are you feeling? Are you ready for today? Is there anything that is maybe bothering you about today? What are some of the things you're looking forward to today? And also, too, I have the heart of servitude. So I always say, who can I serve today? What will my servitude look like for today? And just really spending time with me, because if I'm not okay with me, then I can't be okay with anybody else.
Hmm.
Genuinely. We can always fake it and be like, hi, how are you doing today? But we really don't feel that way inside. So I like to be honest with myself. I like to send good signals to myself, and I like to make sure that I'm okay first and then go from there. Once I do get that out the way, I might work out. I might start checking in with other people, seeing how they're doing. It might seem a little bit selfish, but we have to take out that time for ourselves. And then I practice the same thing in the evening or at night as well too. I'm always getting in that exercise because I believe in the hybrid structure being holistic. My great grandmother, she lived to be 104 years old. So I hope
Whoa.
to have that same level of longevity. So I'm always making sure that I'm taking care of myself and I'm being a good steward to myself.
Hmm.
Because like I said before, I am a role model. I am the example for other people. So I can't just tell other people to do something, but then I'm not doing it myself. So I just got to make sure I hold myself accountable, keep myself in that check. Did we do this? Check, and then kind of go on from there. Because if we just start waking up and we're watching the media, we're looking at social content, or we're in this level of hysteria, I'm already sending the wrong signals to myself, and I can't do that.
That freaking hits hard. First of all, your grandmother living to 104,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah,
That's incredible. That is so incredible.
right.
And was she sharp? Like, because I know a lot, like my grandfather, he passed away at like 94, and he was sharp as a freaking
Hmm.
tack. That guy was
Yep,
on it. Yeah.
yep.
And what
Did
do you attribute that to? Just like lifestyle, mindset, nutrition? What do you think it was for your grandmother? All those things put together?
I think it was just her relationship with God. I just think that
Mm,
she was a good steward, and I just think it was her attributed to her being disciplined just with life, and by her just really taking care of herself. She was able to put herself first. Even though she had kids, she was married, she took care of herself. Sometimes you get people who pour into the job, who pour into their kids, who pour into the community, but then you have nothing left for yourself. So then what does that happen? You can't be feeding everybody else, but then now you're hungry. And then you
mhm.
only feed yourself towards where you get to be starving. And that's not good. We don't want to be starving and then we're eating every day. So we want to just send those good signals. And like they say, the more you treat yourself better, the more yourself will treat you. We're going to be in these bodies for some time. So we might as well just take care of them and really enjoy the ride. So it's like, could you even imagine being here for 104 years, but you're here and your body isn't doing the best? It's like you don't want that. You want to take,
Yeah.
like they say, take good care of your car will take care of you.
Yeah. You got to change the oil, right? You got to
Exactly.
change the
Yeah.
oil. And you can't pour into other people when your cup is empty. So what are you doing there?
Right. And you
Yeah.
can't drive if the gas is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a big believer in just in my own experience, like my own journey these past few years. I entered entrepreneurship thinking that I was going to do something great. But and even with early success that I had, I felt it being limited because my spiritual connection was completely non-existent. It was broken. Right around that same time, I found a relationship with God. And once that happened, I was able to level up even more because now I found a purpose, and I realized that it wasn't there was something greater than me, and
Yeah.
it gave me a lot of purpose. And as adults and as men and women, we need purpose. If we don't have if we lack purpose, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's very, very difficult to get up every day and do great things, let alone do anything at all. Right. And
Right.
then the other thing that I realized was, which are all things that you touched on, was I had let myself go physically. I was always like somebody who was in the gym or whatever, but there was a couple years where I just turned into a slug
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't even love myself. So how could I expect my wife and my son to look at me and respect me in the form that I was in? So I am a big believer in a strong entrepreneur. A strong business requires a strong body, a
Yep.
strong mind, and a strong heart. And all of those things together can create the catalyst for you to be unstoppable and to do really great things and to achieve the desired end result that you talk to your clients about. So,
Yes, and the one thing I always tell them, I do not want for you to leave this earth and have an empty experience. If you listen to the tools and the guides that I have in place, this will ensure that fulfillment because I'm only giving you, I'm only allowing you to hack into me because I'm here to help you out with your desire. And within that, like I tell them, I'm not telling you what I think you should do. I'm telling you what I think you would do if you had the knowledge I had.
mhm.
And then that's how we go ahead and we start to bridge this. So I think that for everybody listening, if you're able to start really taking notes and you're able to start saying, this is the game plan, this is the blueprint. Let me put things together today so I can wake up tomorrow and that can be day one.
Every day is day one.
Yeah, that's it.
Every day is day one. And if you're moving the needle, I like my fitness coach tells me, just be 1% better today. That's it.
Mm-hmm,
You don't have to be 100% better
mm-hmm,
every day. Be
right.
1% better today, and you're making progress. And
Mm-hmm,
always strive to do better than you did yesterday. And I say, like, I'm not competing with anybody else. I'm competing with who I was yesterday,
that's
and
it.
I just want to be better than that guy.
Yep.
Because sometimes that guy was on point, but sometimes that guy sucked, and
Mm-hmm,
like I'm trying to show him up. So
mm-hmm.
that's awesome. One more time, let the people know how they can get in touch with you, how they can find you, and where they can get your book.
Yes, absolutely. So, my book it is called "Influence Yourself in Life and Leadership," and this is available on Amazon. So look it up under Shauntel Murphy. You can follow me on Instagram. I'm under EmpowerAll01. And most importantly, you can just send me an email. Just drop an email. Email address is Shauntel, SHAUNTEL at wishingyouwell.org.
Awesome. I'm going to put all of that information also in the description of the video. So when people watch this on YouTube or wherever they see it, they're going to have that information there. And hopefully
Thank you.
they take the initiative to get in touch with you. If they felt like something you said really resonated with them, which I think some people will, hopefully they have the courage to reach out to you and take the steps needed to start their journey, right? If or rocket ship their journey from
Yeah,
where it is now onto
that's
the
right.
next level,
That's
right?
right.
So
Yep, that's
that
right.
that's
Yep.
awesome. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you and meeting you and learning about who you are and what makes you tick. um, You are a beautiful soul. I truly believe that, and it has been my pleasure. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you too, and likewise, I appreciate this, and we've had just a really wonderful conversation. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Mhm.